Good morning. Sorry, I got a text right as it was empty. All right. So we're going to dive right in today because I want to make sure to respect your time, and we've got a little bit to cover. As you guys hopefully remember from a couple weeks ago, I said I was going to do a deep dive on buyers or for buyers. We've been doing sellers for like 3 months now, and I want to cover the 2 phone calls that we make for our buyers to listing brokers and the scripts that we use to glean information out of the listing broker to help our buyers win. So that's the topic we're going to cover today. And then, as always, we'll open it up to questions at the end, which you are welcome to include in those questions. Any scripting or topics that sorry, I got 2 screens. Let me shut off the other screen. All right. We always reserve a little time at the end in case there's any situations that you guys find yourselves in that you'd love to know what I would say. So just FYI about me, I've been doing this a long time. I started in 1987, so I'm in my 38th year. I've sold over 3,000 homes. I've also closed over 5,000 mortgages. So I have a depth of experience on both sides of the equation that is somewhat uncommon. So here's the question for today. Do you have a system for writing offers? And by that, I mean not only the contracts themselves, but the delivery of the offers, right? So that's what we're going to cover today. And the reason you want to have one and an approach is I always use the chocolate chip cookie analogy. If you make kick-ass chocolate chip cookies, you should make them the same way every time, right? You're not going to create a new process every time you make cookies. Well, you should do the same thing with offer writing, right? You should have a process. You follow a sequence of events, things that you say consistently that make your clients feel more comfortable, that build rapport with the listing broker, help your chances of winning, right? So develop a process. I'm going to share with you my process, right? So the first thing in our process, and actually the entire process, I'll walk you through the steps, are call the listing broker, then have an offer strategy session with your client. Consider in that session taking a 2-step approach, and we'll cover what that is, and then write the offer, and then call the listing broker a second time before you deliver it, in case they've received any other offers, right? And then if they have, you might have to discuss revisions with your client. But that's it. Phone call to the listing broker, conversation with your client, and then the offer writing process, and then a second phone call to the listing broker. And I'm going to cover the scripts that I use in both of those phone calls. And then you also want to be very cognizant of the timing of delivery of your offer and expiration of your offer. There's a lot of people that operate kind of fast and loose with this. I don't know about your contracts in the state you're in, but in our state, if I leave the expiration date blank, it defaults to 2 days. Well, that's rarely the amount of time I want it to be, right? It can be, but it's the majority of the time it's something else, right? It could be today at 9 o'clock. It could be tomorrow morning or tomorrow by noon or whatever, right? Understand that the expiration is a tool and a weapon that you can use in a negotiation to either put pressure on the other party or to demonstrate that you're reasonable to the other party, right? So we can do a deeper dive on that another time. But step 1, call the listing broker, right? Hey, listing broker, I just want to tell you it's great showing. That house is awesome. You did a great job marketing that house. What am I doing by complimenting them? I'm getting them to like me, right? When you talk to somebody about them, you literally are discussing their favorite topic themselves, right? Plain and simple. So when you're complimenting people, it draws them to you and it gets them to like you. It's a fast track to building rapport. Humor also helps build rapport, unless they're a stump and a bump on a log, right? But if you're charming and complimentary, etc., they're going to be drawn to like you. Then the first question is, hey, listing broker, what are the terms besides price that are most important to your clients? Right? Obviously, price is important. I don't need that answer. I need to know what else, right? Are they looking for a rent back? Do they want to close quickly and get the hell out of Dodge? Whatever, right? What terms besides price are most important to your client? They may say clean, high offer, period. That's it. Great. If they say that, that means I probably didn't build enough rapport if they say it that way, right? But that could be the answer, and there's nothing wrong with that. But you want to be probing in case there are some hot buttons that are important to the seller, right? Also ask them, how much time does your client need to respond? My client's been screwed by this market, so they're gun shy. So we want to make it as short as needed, but without creating a hardship for you. What have I done there? I've shown diligence for my client, but a reasonableness to the listing broker and their client, right? I'm not trying to put them under the gun, but I want to be deliberate about my expiration. So that's a good way to ask, right? If they have a review date, ask them, hey, if my client decides to shower your client with money, will your client consider abandoning their plan to wait? Will your client consider abandoning the review date? Because you got to remember, when a seller and a listing broker put a review date into the listing, they've done that to get more than the asking price. They're trying to accumulate and aggregate offers together to get people to bid against each other, right? So our offer needs to be strong enough to knock them off that plan. So I want to ask them, can I do that? Will I have any luck in convincing your client to abandon their plan? If they say, yeah, for the right offer, great. How much do you think it'll take? Well, it's up to you, right? They may not tell me a whole lot, but I can play the hotter, colder game. Like, let's say their house is listed for $900,000, just to pick a number. We'll say $500,000 because I know I'm in Seattle where the median is over 900. Let's say $500,000, right? I can say, well, what's it going to take? Well, I can't really tell you that. Well, do you think 550 will be enough? Probably not. Okay. How about 575? Am I getting warmer, colder? Right? So I can play that game and get a little bit of more information out of somebody. And if they say no, I want to pressure test that no. They're going to say, nope, we're super committed to the review date. Okay, but what if someone more pushy than I am comes along and pushes harder and offers more? Will your client cave? And I use the word cave specifically because it sounds like a failure, right? Is he going to cave in? And what I've done there is I haven't guaranteed that they aren't going to accept another offer early, but there's a higher likelihood that they won't because they've now made this commitment to someone else, me, that they aren't going to quit, right? So keep that question in your pocket when you're in this conversation, because if someone more pushy than I am comes along and pushes even harder or offers even more money, are you going to cave? Nope. No way, man. We are sticking to the plan. Great. Thank you for that. Right? When they say sticking to the plan, this increases the chances they won't sell early. Right? All right. If they're, that's a duplicate. I don't know why I had that slide twice, but okay. Now let's talk about the two-step, right? When I'm talking to my client and there is a review date, we don't have to stick to the review date, right? Even if I ran through that previous script and they said, nope, we're sticking to the plan, I can still try. State law requires that he put my offer in front of his client, right? So I can have that conversation with my client and say, we can consider a two-step approach to writing the offer, right? And step one is going to be writing the offer as strong as we can without an escalator clause and with as few contingencies as possible. That's what we mean by clean, right? No contingencies, or as few as they're comfortable doing. So you're going to have occasions where the buyer isn't comfortable with that. No problem. Let's wait for the review date. You're going to have other occasions where the buyer's like, well, how aggressive do you think I need to be? And I'll get them to understand that the inspection contingency is a huge weakness, right? Because sellers consider inspection contingencies a second bite at the apple, right? They'll negotiate on price. The buyer will negotiate on price. Then they'll do an inspection and go negotiate more on price, right? So that's how you talk to your client if they want to do the two-step, right? So then we're going to make the offer at or near your client's maximum straight away without an escalator to get there, right? Because we're doing this under the presumption that there's no second offer, and an escalator only gets triggered if there's a second offer. So you want to write this without the escalator so that that seller knows, hey, I'm willing to give you $575 today. No contingencies or minimal or whatever, right? Make the offer expire quickly and well before the offer review date. I'll give you a great example of how this works. In fact, I'll stop sharing so I can look at you. I had a deal Super Bowl weekend. We wrote an offer. They had an offer review date because of the Super Bowl for Tuesday, the followed Super Bowl Sunday. I wrote an offer on Saturday that expired Saturday, and we went hard on price and hard on terms and got aggressive. They accepted my offer. They never removed the review date though. So the funny thing was on Monday, and here's the best part, we still did an inspection. I just put language that said it was for informational purposes only, which, by the way, that doesn't prevent you from asking for repairs. It just makes them think that you're not going to ask for any repairs, right? You've certainly tainted the negotiations, though, if you come back and try and nickel and dime. But the point I'm making is, while I'm driving to the inspection on Monday, there's a whole bunch of brokers writing offers on Monday for submission on Tuesday, and this house was already sold. And how heartbroken do you think those buyers were going to be, right? Because they didn't have an agent like you or I who knows how to be more aggressive and how to get things done, right? All right. Continuing on, submit the offer right away, right? Step two, let's say you tried and the seller said no, right? Well, then we're going to take that same offer that we already wrote and submitted, and we're just going to add an escalator clause to it, and we're going to back down the opening price, right? So I'll keep running with my example of a $500,000 list price. Let's say my first bite at the apple, or my first attempt, step one attempt, was $575, no escalator. Well, now I might write it at $505, but escalate to $575 or even $580, right? Here's another dialogue that works really well. I'll stop my share and look at you guys again. If there's a natural threshold, like pretend the threshold on this example is 600. I'll say this to my client. Great. I think this is strong. It's going to have a great chance. Do you think there's any chance another buyer might also go to 600? And they'll say, yeah, I guess maybe. Would you consider doing like 607 so that we beat those people that stop at 600? And they go, you're really smart, or you've done this before, right? If there's a natural threshold where you think a lot of people are going to go to but stop at, see if your client will bump just a little above that, because that could be the difference maker, right? All right. Now, managing the submission of the offer is just as important, right? So in your market, when a listing broker has a review date, they probably say something like, please submit offers by noon, or please submit all offers by 5 p.m. or whatever. Submit your offer just 1 hour before that time lapses. Because what you don't want is for them to take your offer, if you submitted a day early or even 2 hours early, and shop your offer around, because they're going to use your offer to get other people to go higher than you, and you lose in every instance, right? And then when you're writing the offer, there's a YouTube video on my channel. I'll just show you what it looks like. I won't actually play it. Where I cover all of the techniques for writing winning offers. So these are all of the things besides price that you can do to an offer. Now, keep in mind that you're going to be looking at Washington farms. I'm in Seattle. So, you can use a lot of these tips and tricks, but you can also adjust them for your state, right? All right. Then you send it to your client for signature. Then you call the listing broker a second time. Hey, great news. I was able to get my client to write. Let me ask you, have you received any other offers since our last conversation? This can be the next day. This can be an hour later. It can be whatever, right? And you never know if they've received a second offer. Because remember, the premise of this review date strategy is they think they priced it at a level that's going to create multiple offers. Well, you don't know when those offers are going to arrive. Even if there's no review date, I'm going to make 2 phone calls every time to make sure that after I've written the offer, the playing field hasn't changed, right? Build more rapport. Find out if there are other offers, what's the amount, right? Oh, that's awesome. Congratulations. How high do I need to be now? Well, I can't be specific, but this one's above asking. Okay. Like way above asking? Well, a fair amount. Did they go to 600? Oh, no, they didn't go to 600. 575? Oh, come on now. I can't be that 580? Am I getting warmer, colder, warmer, right? Like I can pull information out of somebody, especially if I built rapport with them. The other benefit of building rapport is when they get multiple offers, if I'm close but still not the top bidder, I get phone calls all the time from agents because I follow this process where they call and they go, hey, Ed, I just want to let you know that we ended up with 7 offers and you're in 3rd place right now. Ah, man, bummer. How high do I need to be to win? And they'll tell me because I've built rapport multiple times over the course of these conversations, right? And then in this second phone call, I just say, I'm going to be sending the offer over, right? And I end with, hey, if I am not in a position to win, would you be willing to give me a call? Because we might be able to revise it up even a little more. Now, does everybody do that? No, of course not. Or does everybody agree to do that? No, of course not. But I get a lot of them. And then what is more powerful? I'm going to stop sharing so I can look at you guys again. What is more powerful for your client than to know exactly how much they need to offer to win and have the choice? They don't have to pay that amount, but they get to choose, right? That's really powerful. Crystal, you have a question?
Yeah, so I'm kind of like a newer agent in like a really tight area, so I don't have that whole rapport thing going. I feel like it's almost like the opposite of like upgrade another agent. So if like this sounds great that you can build this type of relationship, you've been in the area for a long time, and what if it's like not that easy for another agent who.
Crystal, I'm gonna call you out on this. Your issue is not your newness and it's not the market. It's the 6 inches between your ears. You're a charming person. Like, building rapport has nothing to do with experience and depth of knowledge, none of that, right? And
The extent where they're going to share that kind of information when there's like already 5 other agents and competing offers that they've worked with in the past, and it's like, I don't.
did you catch the beginning of my remarks though? Because what I said at the beginning is compliment them on their listing and their marketing, and joke with them and talk about them. Like, basic human interaction tells you that the more you talk to someone, like I'm talking to you, if I were talking to you about you, it would cause you to like me more. Unless, of course, I say you're an idiot or whatever, right? But if I'm complimenting you and I'm telling you what a great job on the marketing you've done, and I've always respected your business, you can look them up in your MLS real quickly and see that they've sold hundreds of homes or not, or you're doing great for only being in the business for a short period of time, whatever. Like, compliment them before you start asking, hey, what terms besides price are important to your client? And that will draw them to you as much or as little as they're open to, right? So don't fail to try because of what you're thinking is a barrier to your success. Just try and you'll get better and better at it, right? I mean, these are the beautiful thing about everything I teach is these are skills, not natural talents. So that means they're all things that you could develop. And it just takes practice. Some great techniques I'll just share with you for learning these skills quicker is role play with fellow brokers, right? And just play. I'll be the listing broker this time, then you be the listing broker next time. Recording these scripts into your phone and listening to yourself in your voice saying these words will actually cement it into your brain more quickly. So
perfect. Because I just started a role play. It starts at 8:30. Today we're doing expireds, but because I couldn't get any more so we started one, and it's like, I think it's helping. We've only done it for a couple weeks now, but
it's absolutely helping. I am such a huge fan of role playing.
So I like that agent to agent role play. I haven't really seen that, but that's perfect. I'm gonna put that on the list. Thank you.
You know what else? You can role play with AI.
Oh yeah.
ChatGPT. But here's why I think it's better to do it with an agent, because there's something psychological about, man, if I do a good job with this when I'm role playing with Crystal, who knows what I should be saying, and I don't mess it up, then I'm going to crush it with a consumer who they don't know what I'm supposed to say, but I do, right? Or I'm going to crush it with a listing broker who doesn't know what I'm supposed to say, but I do. So it's always harder when you're doing it with somebody that knows the script, and that makes you try harder. It also cements it for you better. So I'm going to keep going because I want to make you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Great question. All right. So we've covered, if they did get a second offer while you've been working on your offer, you can call your client and say, hey, we got to revise, or do you want to revise? Like, in the end, all of this is your client's decision, right? It's not up to you, but they can decide if they want to go a little bit higher. And I'll tell you another great dialogue that works with your client is when they say, I'm comfortable going to 575. I say, great, got it, 575. What if somebody comes in at 585? Are you going to be mad at the market or mad at me or mad at the seller? Well, because now I've distilled it down to 10 grand. And a lot of people will decide, well, I don't want to lose over 10 grand. Let's go to 585. And you know what I do? I go, great, got it, 585. What if somebody comes in at 590? Are you going to be mad at me or the seller or the market? Well, I don't want to lose over 5 grand. Yeah, let's go to 590. And I'll keep asking that question until they say, hey, you're going to just keep asking me that question, right? And I go, yeah, but here's the reason why. It's not that I'm trying to squeeze you for money. It's because I'm trying to get your brain wrapped around something that's very intangible, which is a price that you would be happy if you won. But if somebody beat you by $1,000, you'd feel like they can have it. They overpaid. And that's a very intangible number. And only you can decide what that number is. And they go, oh, okay, yeah, 600 is my max. And then that, great. So I got them to come up a little bit, right? Because all I want to do is win. And I've already given them the dialogue that says, I'm going to write an escalator clause so that we only go higher if we have to. And I'm going to make sure that they have to provide us with the offer that triggers the escalator clause so we can verify. Does that make sense? And they go, oh, yeah. Now let's talk about managing the timing, right? We want to make our offer, submit our offer an hour before, right? If there's a review date, and expire on the same day. Unless they say submit by 9 p.m., then I'll make it expire the next day at noon. But I want to have a very closed window. And the listing broker needs to have been planful when they did it because they know their client's schedule and they know their own schedule, right? So don't submit early. If the offer review doesn't exist, submit immediately and expire in as little time as needed without creating that hardship that we were talking about earlier, right? And I've also used this trick. When I call the listing broker and they say, give me 2 days to respond, I'll say, oh, is your client out of the country? No, he's just, hard to reach and lazy or whatever. I'm like, okay, I'll try. And then I write it to expire in 1 day and I blame my client because I don't want them to have 2 days to shop my offer around and squeeze someone else for more money, right? So don't get worked by the listing broker. A little hardship for them is better than your offer being used to leverage up another buyer so that you lose anyway, right? All right, we made it. And it's 8:29. Look at that. Any questions today or scripting scenarios that you want to run through? Hey, Sam, I saw you came off mute.
No, just a quick question. Now, when the property is available, buyers back off. And when the multiple situation, they complain that you are not getting the home. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, so I use every multiple offer situation that we lose as an opportunity to learn, right?
Yeah.
So I share in the disappointment with my client, but then I remind them that someone liked it more and was willing to be more aggressive. Let's remember that when we write our next offer. The other dialogue that I use is, hey, Sam, one thing that I've noticed is I've never had a client grieve the one that got away when they finally buy one. And what that tells me is the one that you're going to ultimately buy will be better than this one we just missed out on, right? And they go, yeah, that's a good way to look at it or think about it. But you'll find as buyers lose, the second time they write may not be that aggressive, but then the third time is more aggressive. And the fifth time is super. They're like, I'm done. Let's go to 1 million. I don't want to lose this one at all. So just, don't miss an opportunity to have that conversation. And I'll tell you the dialogue to use with the listing broker when you lose, call him and say, hey, Sam, let's say you're the listing broker, right? Hey, Sam, congrats on getting your listing sold. I'm super happy for you and your client. Can you tell me what place did I come in and how high did it go? I just want to coach my client. And they'll typically tell you. A good agent like me, I would never tell you because that puts my client at a weakness if our deal doesn't close, right? But most agents aren't as savvy as you and I. So they'll tell you And that allows me to go back to my client and say, man, there were 7 offers and we came in 5th and we lost by 50 grand. Ah, that sucks. Right? But that'll help them be more aggressive on the next one. Does that make sense, Sam?
Yeah. My other question is, when the properties are available and market is little bit down, the buyers, the same buyers, now they don't want. They say that, our price is going down, let me wait. How do you?
Our market is not depreciating. So if you have a client that's waiting for prices to go down, you need to coach them on why that's not going to happen for probably at least 10 years. And in fact, why don't we cover that next week? There's a significant shortage of inventory, and I can walk you guys through why that is. And then we can talk about how long is it going to take to get out of that hole. Would that be helpful, you think?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's do that next week because we're at the bottom of the hour. But I appreciate you guys joining me, and hopefully you got some nuggets out of it, and we'll see you next week. All right.
If you'd like more information or to get connected to the Agent Power Huddle, join our free Facebook group. This call was designed for the agents in our EXP organization, but open to any agent from any brokerage. If you're a guest and you're interested in learning more about EXP or our specific resources within the Agent Collective, reach out to the person who invited you to this call to get more info. Produced by the Agent Collective Media Network.